Let's go into the basics of what splits are and how the heck do you actually implement them. There needs to be a specific agreement in place to protect the person who is managing the revenue. DistroKid actually has a feature where you can set up splits right on their platform. So we're gonna do a step-by-step guide here of I got a new cat this week. What's up, music meeples? My name is Kendra, and in the game of music marketing, strategy is everything. Let's get into it. Today, we are going to be talking about splits. I have received so many comments of people asking for me to explain a little bit more about how splits work. So let's go into the basics of what splits are and how the heck do you actually implement them. In the music industry, splits refers to splitting the revenue that a song is making. Usually, splits are going to be represented in percentages. For example, maybe you have a song that you co-wrote that you worked really 50-50 on. 50% is going to go to one artist, 50% is going to go to the other. For example, if a song makes $100, it is distributed by two independent artists. $50 is going to go to one artist, $50 is going to go to the other. It's a nice even split. Ahead of time, those artists are going to make sure that they have an agreement of what percentage is going to go where. The number one thing that you want to know is that splits are always going to be a percentage allocation. That means that you are going to say this person gets this much percent, this person gets this percent, and basic math, all of those need to add up to 100% of the revenue. Now, there are different types of royalties that you might be splitting with other musicians, with your managers, with your label, with a lot of different industry professionals. So let's take a look at what those are. The first thing is performance royalties. So these are generated when your song is performed live out in the world. So if there is a live performance at a festival, a concert, something like that, you get a performance royalties. Another example of performance royalties is going to be on the radio. If your song is on the radio, that counts as a performance. It's going to be paid out through your PRO. In order to collect these, you do need to register with a PRO, a performance rights organization. Now, I have a separate video all about PROs. We don't need to get into the details of that. However, you will need to make sure that you are aware that within performances, usually there's going to be a specific split between the artist and the publisher. If you want to know more about that specific split, just check out my other video on my channel all about PROs. Performance royalties, that's the first thing that you're going to come across where you will need to split your revenue. Let's look at another one. Mechanical royalties. Now, this is becoming a little bit outdated, a little bit tricky, but it is the physical sale of the music. So a CD, vinyl, that is going to generate mechanical royalties. Think of mechanical as like a machine. It's like hands-on. The mechanical royalties for the physical sales of the music. Now, even though mechanical royalties really means like the physical sale, these days, as the industry is changing, a digital download also counts as a mechanical royalty. Like they are taking that music from the cloud, from the internet, and they are physically moving it onto their device. They are downloading it. That counts as a mechanical transaction and it earns mechanical royalties. So we have the first two, our performance royalties and our mechanical royalties. There is a third one that you might need to split, and that is sync licensing royalties. Sync licensing refers to when your song is used in a video. So that could be in a commercial, it could be used on a Netflix show or a documentary or something like that, a movie, any of those things. If your song is used in a film of some sort, that filmmaker needs to get a sync license. Then, whenever that song is played, it is paid out through, I believe, mostly through the performance rights organization as well. And there are sync royalties that you will then split among all of the parties that helped create the music. So we now know it's a percentage. That's what a split is. It's a percentage split between all the people that helped make the music. We also now know that there's three real types of royalties that are going to be split: the performance, mechanical, and sync. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some common scenarios where you might need to split revenue. One of the most common people that an artist needs to split their revenue with is the producer of the album, the producer of the tracks. Often that will be like a 70-30 percentage, so the artist will get 70% and the producer will get 30%. In each album, there's going to be that artist and producer. Now, if you are very independent, just recording things at home, you're just gonna really be able to keep 100%. It's only when you start working with other people, hiring more people to work on your music, that you really need to start learning about the appropriate way to do splits. Now here's another one that's very common and very tricky. Band members. If you have a band of 6 people, you need to split the revenue among those 6 people. And you might also have the producer that worked on the album. So this is where things start to get really complicated. If you have multiple band members, it's not just a solo artist, you will need to organize splits of the revenue, of the royalties to each member of the band. And you need to have a contract ahead of time to specify what percentage each band member gets. These can change a little bit based on some complicated factors. For example, if one band member wrote the song, but all 5 performed it, does the person who wrote it get a higher percentage? It's something you need to talk about, and it gets very tricky. So yes, you need to have these conversations before the song is released. Another example of a common split is if there is a separate songwriter. So often artists will perform songs that were written by somebody else. And so that songwriter is going to get a split, a cut of the revenue, and then the artist is or the vocalist or performer is going to get their own split of the revenue. In addition to songwriters, there's also the publisher who helped release and do all the business side of the song. Okay, are you following me so far? So this is why splits can be so complicated. I would say it's one of the most complicated things that independent musicians are working through. Not only how to plan them out ahead of time, but how to actually then allocate the money to the proper parties. Let's talk a little bit more about how to actually set up the splits so that you have a healthy level of communication with all the parties involved. Let's set up the splits. The first step in setting up the splits, meaning deciding who gets what percentage, is going to be negotiation. You have to have a conversation, and honestly, it's better to have that conversation in person or over the phone for the initial conversation. Sending emails back and forth can get a little bit tricky. Things can be lost in tone. So for that initial conversation, if you are independent, if you don't have a manager to do this for you, that's a big side note, is just talking like, hey, what do you think the splits should look like for the revenue and the royalties on this? Have a candid conversation. That's the most basic level, the most basic step that you have to do if you are collaborating with other people. This conversation should take place before you distribute the song. Very important. You don't want to have this conversation after. Once you've had that initial conversation, it's very important that step 2, you get it documented. You get it in writing. So once you have had that conversation over the phone, on a video conference, something, once you've talked about it and discussed all of the ins and outs of why you might offer certain percentages to different people, then it's so important to get it in writing. If you are making a significant amount of money, you will want to consider working with a lawyer that can help you really draft up specific contracts. But if you are just starting out and you're just collaborating with your friends, having something in writing, in an email, in some sort of formal document is very important. If you can work with a lawyer, that is going to be the best option to ensure that it's legally binding, but that can be expensive. So if you're just working with your friends, still have it in writing, print it out old school, and have everyone sign it so that it is very clear before the music is distributed that every single person understands what percentage they are getting. All right, so step 1 was to negotiate with a conversation. Step 2 is to get it in writing. Step 3 is to figure out how people are actually going to get their money. Some music distribution platforms like DistroKid do have a splits feature where you can actually just log it in there. You can say, okay, this song 70% is going to go to me, 30% is going to go to the producer. That's it. And you can actually allocate those funds so that DistroKid will take the revenue from a specific track or a specific album, and it will distribute it to 2 separate accounts. Most independent music distributors, though, don't have this feature. So that means that you are going to have to do it manually. This is why this third step is so important. You need to have a plan before the money comes in of how you will actually get them their money. If you are the primary artist, you uploaded and distributed the track on your own, and you are responsible for sharing the revenue. It could be as simple as you showing them the documentation of this is how much it generated. You could show them a screenshot, or you can log in with them, show them how much the song has generated in revenue, do the math of a 30% cut, and then just Venmo or PayPal them that money. Of course, there's taxes involved. You'll have to do a whole other thing on that. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But at its most basic level, you just do the math, calculate the percentages, and send them the money. Or you use DistroKid and they allocate the funds for you. That is the third step to setting up your splits. Let's review those one more time. You need to negotiate ahead of time, agree in person, talking, not in email, talk to each other. Then you get it documented and signed. Then third, you come up with an implementation plan of exactly how each party will get their money. Let's go over some examples of what splits look like. This is Sprigatito, and she just kind of showed up at our house and never left. So she was very angry that I was filming without her, so she might be part of this now. So imagine a song with the following contributors and splits. You've got your lead artist on the track. They're gonna get 50%. Then you have the producer. Let's give them 20%. After that, you have the songwriter, separate from the artist in this case. We're gonna give them 15%. And let's say there's a featured artist on the track. They are gonna get 15% as well. So here we have the breakdown: 50, 20, 15, 15. We have 4 different people getting money off of one track. So let's say that song makes $1,000. The lead artist is going to get $500, the producer is going to get $200, and then the songwriter and the featured artist are each going to get $150. So by clearly defining the splits ahead of time and deciding exactly who gets what, you are ensuring that everyone who contributed to the music is fairly compensated. This is so important, especially as you are just getting started to get right. Okay, now that we know what splits are, let's talk about exactly how to do splits. Now, I mentioned that DistroKid actually has a feature where you can set up splits right on their platform. So let's log into my DistroKid account and take a look at the splits feature. We are in DistroKid. Notice right at the top, it says splits. Let's click on that and get the process started. Now this says automatically this splits the payment to your collaborators. So this means automatically any percentage of the earnings that you have previously agreed upon is going to be distributed separately into different DistroKid accounts. This is going to be free for all DistroKid members. You don't have to pay extra fees for this feature. It is included. So once you have logged in, now I am not an artist, so I have not actually distributed music on this platform, which means that I actually cannot set up a split. You have to have released a track in order to set up a split for it. First you release it, then you set up the split. But let's talk through what this is going to look like. The first thing you're going to do is add each collaborator, and you're going to do that by entering in their email addresses. This needs to be the email address that is associated with their DistroKid account. Once you have put all of the collaborators, invited them to be part of this split, you can then start allocating percentages. And of course, the total must add up to 100%. Once you have added the email addresses, assigned them a percent, you confirm and you save the work. From here, DistroKid is going to send an email to each of those collaborators inviting them to split the revenue of this song. So they can just go into their inbox and accept that invitation. They will then have to log into their DistroKid account to accept that. Now, what if they don't use DistroKid? This gets a little tricky, but it is possible. It is possible to set up a, I believe, free splits account on DistroKid. So even if that artist uses a different platform for their distribution, you can still split the revenue, but they will have to create a DistroKid account. It's just called a splits account. Let's talk about the three main exciting things about DistroKid splits. First, it is automatic, which is amazing. It can be a lot of work to calculate the percentages by yourself and then Venmo all the different people involved. DistroKid is going to do it for you. It's automatic. So once you set up the split and each of the collaborators have accepted their invitation, then it's super easy from there then on out. DistroKid just distributes the money to the different DistroKid accounts. You probably will not see the total revenue earned from the song. You'll just see what your percentage cut is that is coming into your account. Another great thing about DistroKid is that you can adjust it. Let's say things change over time. If you need to adjust who gets a split of the royalties, if you need to adjust the percentages, you can do that at any time. But again, it'll just have to be approved by each person as you go. And one extra little bonus feature is it does say that there's a recoupment feature. So like if one person encumbered the cost of renting out the studio, you can have that person gets, say, the first $500, and then after that initial amount, then the remaining goes in. That's possible too. So that's how you do splits on DistroKid. What about TuneCore? Let's talk about splits on TuneCore a little bit here. TuneCore does not offer an automatic splits feature like DistroKid does, so it's going to look a little bit different. You will need to manually manage and distribute the proper royalties to each of the collaborators. This is going to be a little bit hands-on, but here's how you do it. We're going to do a step-by-step guide here of how to do splits using TuneCore. First step. Agree on the splits. Before you distribute the track, you need to have in writing exactly who is going to get what percentage. When you are allocating these amounts, it should all add up to 100%. Once you have documented, agreed upon those splits, then you can release the track. You're going to upload your track or your album to TuneCore and distribute the music as normal. You will want to make sure as you go that you are filling in all of the required metadata of the producers, of the songwriters, anybody that needs to be credited. You need to put that in the details as you are uploading the original track. Once the song is live, it's out into the world, you then go on to step 3, which is collecting the royalties. TuneCore is going to collect the royalties for all of the streams, the digital downloads. It's all going to be collected in that initial account where the song was distributed from. This happens automatically after you distribute. All of the revenue will be paid out into that single account. Then we get to step 4. Which is to track the earnings. So as you go, you need to track how much the song is making. You want to keep track of what's happening. TuneCore does provide daily reports for you. You can see exactly how much the track is making. Step 5 is going to be to calculate the splits. You already decided ahead of time how much each person is going to get. So now you need to do the math. Let's say your track made $100. You can give 50% to the artist, 30% to the producer, 20% to the songwriter, or whatever it is that you already agreed on. This gets a little tricky because you have to calculate it accurately and you want to have transparency with all of the people involved. So you want to show them what was the total amount of revenue generated in the month. Then go through and calculate, show the percentages. This is the 50% cut that this person will get. This is the so-and-so cut that this person will get. Once it has all been calculated, then you can distribute the royalties. As the primary account holder, you will accept the transfer of the funds into your account, and then you will need to pay out the individuals separately. So what other tools could you use to help you with this process if you don't have DistroKid? If you need to do these splits manually, if you're using any music distribution platform to collect your royalties other than DistroKid, here are some other software options or tools that could help you with this process. Number one is basic accounting software. You could use QuickBooks or Wave to help you keep track of how much revenue is coming in and what percentages are being allocated to different parties. This is really going to help make sure that there's accuracy, that there's a clear record of the entire history of the allocations of revenues. Tool number two is just to use basic spreadsheets. You know, if you are a small company, small label, you're a small artist, and you are not generating a ton of money yet, you might not want to invest in an accounting software, so you can just keep track of things on spreadsheets. You can use Google Sheets or any other program just to keep track of them in a spreadsheet from year to year. Let's go ahead and set up one of these together. You're going to want to record your earnings and splits for each track. Include columns that include the total earnings, each collaborator's percentage that they are getting, and the final amount that each person is owed. Another tool that you're going to want to use is some sort of payment platform. So this could be Venmo or PayPal, some sort of electronic money transfer app that you can easily share the money with each person. Yes, some people might be a little more old school. They might prefer that you write them a check, but honestly, in this day and age, it's just going to be easier to be able to just send it digitally. They get it instantly. You don't have to pay for postage, so it's great. And the other kind of tool that you might want to have is a legal agreement. Now this kind of goes way back to when you were first setting things up, but having a legal agreement, something that you consult with a lawyer on, that is going to have an expense, but if you are generating a lot of revenue on a song, you want to have a legitimate contract to ensure that all of this is agreed upon ahead of time, so that when people later on decide, oh, hey, I should be making more money, they can't just come at you for it. There needs to be a specific agreement in place to protect the person who is managing the revenue. If you are the person who is in charge of keeping track of these splits, here are some tips on exactly how you can keep track of who gets what. First thing, regularly monitor your account. So whichever distribution platform you are using, keep track of it, have a regular schedule of when you check in, when you look at the revenue, and when you record the numbers. You want to have a set place that you are going to keep these records. So for example, I like to work within Google Drive. It is cloud-based, therefore I can access it on any of the platforms. I can access it on any device that has internet, and that way if my hard drive crashes, I don't lose all of the data. One of the things that you can do as well is you can actually share these files with multiple people from Google Drive, but not allow them to edit them. So when you share a spreadsheet with someone in Google Drive, you have the option to let them comment, to let them be a viewer only, or to let them edit. If you are the manager of the account, I highly recommend just allowing them to comment on it. That way, if there's a question, they can just email you, or they can comment right on the spreadsheet, and they can access and see the updated numbers as the revenue is coming in. And there you have it. That is everything you need to know about managing your splits manually.